Introduction. Friends, if you're excited to experience the magical, otherworldly journey of Elio, 2025, in English, then you're absolutely in the right place. And hey, if you're visiting our channel for the first time, make sure to stick around and subscribe because we bring you everything you need to know about the latest blockbusters, hidden gems, and upcoming cinematic adventures. In today's video, we're going to explore Elio, one of the most imaginative and heartwarming animated films in recent years. We'll cover everything from what this movie is all about, where you can watch it, and every behind-the-scenes detail that makes this film a must-see. Now Elio isn't just any movie. It's a beautifully crafted sci-fi adventure packed with humor, emotion, and a fresh storyline that grabs both kids and adults. In this video, I'll tell you exactly where you can catch this movie, whether it's on an OTT platform, streaming service, or satellite channel. Whether you're planning a family movie night, or just want to enjoy some feel-good storytelling with out-of-this-world visuals, I'll help you figure out the best way to experience this film in all its glory. But that's just the start. We'll also take a deep dive into the technical side of the movie, the animation style, the creative design, the incredible music, and the work that went into sound design and voice direction. You'll learn about the pre-production phase, how the concept evolved, and how the team turned sketches and storyboards into a full-fledged animated spectacle. Then we'll talk about the filming process, or in this case, the animation production, the post-production polish, and everything that goes into making a high-quality animated feature like Elio. Of course, no discussion is complete without touching on the numbers. So yes, we'll also go over the budget, how much was spent to bring Elio to life, and the projected or actual box office collections. Is it a hit? A surprise performer? You'll find out right here. Next up, the story. I'll walk you through the main plot of Elio without giving away any spoilers. I'll talk about what makes this story special, the emotional beats it hits, and how it manages to feel both personal and cosmic at the same time. Then we'll get into the review part. What works, what shines, and how this movie compares to other animated adventures out there. We'll also talk about the facts you may not know, fun trivia, Easter eggs, and secrets from behind the scenes. And of course, we'll explore the characters. Who plays Elio? What's his journey? What other characters make an impact? And which voice actors brought them to life? We'll discuss how each actor performed, which character stood out the most, and how the overall chemistry worked within this animated world. So friends, don't go anywhere. Make sure to watch this video till the end because whether you're an animation fan, a movie buff, or just someone looking for a great story to escape into, this is the full breakdown of Elio you won't want to miss. Let's jump right into it and discover the universe of Elio, 2025 together. Elio, 2025, tells the story of a boy who feels like he doesn't fit in, on Earth, at home, at school, or even in his own skin. From the very beginning, we're introduced to Elio Solis, a dreamer, an artist, a shy and introverted kid whose imagination is bursting at the seams, even if the world around him doesn't seem to notice. He lives with his mother, Olga Solis, a hardworking government scientist who heads a secretive U.S. agency dedicated to making contact with alien life. Olga is focused, brilliant, and devoted to her mission, but her bond with Elio is strained. Not because of a lack of love, but because their worlds are so different. She's trying to reach outer space. He's just trying to survive middle school. The story follows a mostly linear structure, but it unfolds with a playful and emotionally layered tone that keeps you fully immersed. Early scenes highlight Elio's isolation, and how he uses his art and imagination as both an escape and a survival tool. Then a dramatic shift occurs. While his mother is busy testing a new alien communication signal, a strange portal opens and pulls Elio into the unknown. He's teleported to the Communiverse, a vibrant, dazzling assembly of alien species from across the galaxy. Each species is weird, wonderful, and totally alien, but they all have one thing in common. They believe Elio is the long-awaited representative of Earth. This mistaken identity sets the plot into motion. Elio, completely unprepared and absolutely terrified, fumbles his way through an elaborate ceremonial welcome where he's expected to speak on behalf of all humanity. The humor in these early alien scenes is sharp but never mean-spirited. The film uses Elio's awkwardness and sincerity as a source of charm. He stumbles, he panics, he improvises. And to everyone's surprise, he somehow manages to win over the Council of Species. Not because he's qualified, but because he's honest, different, and full of heart. As the narrative unfolds, Elio gets wrapped up in the politics and pressures of being Earth's so-called ambassador. Through each encounter with different alien races, he learns more about himself. The film doesn't rely on flashbacks or experimental timelines, but it uses each encounter as a mirror, revealing new facets of Elio's inner world. These aren't just wild sci-fi adventures, they're emotional experiences disguised as cosmic diplomacy. One alien teaches him about bravery without violence. Another helps him understand empathy through a shared memory exchange. Each moment chips away at Elio's fear of not being enough. The midsection of the story brings deeper conflict. Elio learns that the signal his mother sent wasn't meant to establish official contact. It was misinterpreted. Earth isn't even supposed to be part of the Communiverse yet. This secret threatens to unravel everything. Elio is stuck in a lie he didn't create, forced to play a role that grows heavier by the minute. He wrestles with whether to tell the truth or keep pretending for the sake of peace. Meanwhile, a suspicious delegate begins to investigate Elio more closely, sensing that he's not who he claims to be. This tension explodes in a dramatic trial sequence, a pivotal turning point where Elio is exposed. In front of the entire Communiverse, he's confronted with the truth. This scene isn't just a courtroom drama, it's the emotional climax of the film. Elio, trembling but resolute, finally speaks from the heart. He admits everything. That he's not a hero, not a diplomat, not even brave most of the time. He's just a kid who never felt like he belonged anywhere. But his words, raw and unfiltered, strike a chord. The council doesn't reject him. In fact, they begin to realize that maybe humanity's first representative doesn't need to be perfect or powerful, just honest. That moment of vulnerability becomes the emotional center of the film. Elio's self-doubt, which was a burden at the beginning, transforms into his greatest strength. His ability to express himself, to feel deeply, and to connect without pretending becomes a bridge between worlds. The aliens, touched by his authenticity, decide to open their doors to Earth not because of what humanity knows, but because of what it feels. In the final act, Elio returns to Earth, changed in ways that are quiet but profound. He's no longer the boy who hides behind his sketches. He's found his voice, his confidence, and a new understanding of his place in the universe. His mother, too, experiences growth. She sees her son not just as a child, but as someone capable of connecting with forces far beyond what her science could ever explain. Their relationship, once defined by distance and misunderstanding, becomes warmer and more honest. They sit side by side, not just as mother and son, but as two explorers who've finally found common ground. The film's narrative structure is straightforward, but it's the emotional layering and the depth of character development that elevate it. The story doesn't jump around in time or rely on gimmicks. Instead, it flows like a journey, a true coming-of-age odyssey wrapped in a sci-fi skin. The conflicts aren't driven by explosions or battles, but by identity, fear, and the universal desire to be understood. From a quiet boy's bedroom to the council chambers of the galaxy, Elio unfolds as a heartfelt, imaginative adventure that speaks to anyone who's ever felt small in a big world. In Elio, 2025, the characters are crafted with remarkable care and emotional richness, and their development is woven so deeply into the story that the entire film feels like a character study hidden inside a sci-fi adventure. This isn't just a story about space, aliens, or diplomatic misunderstandings. It's a story about people. People who feel out of place, people who want to be understood, people who are scared of not being enough. The beauty lies in how the film explores these feelings not just through Elio, but through every major character that shares space with him. Elio Solis is at the center, and his transformation is the film's emotional engine. At the beginning, he's not a traditional hero. He's soft-spoken, awkward, deeply imaginative, and painfully insecure. He's the kind of kid who has more conversations with his drawings than with other people. His imagination is vivid, but it's also a hiding place. The world feels too harsh, too confusing, too demanding, so Elio escapes into the one thing he can control, his mind. His relationship with his mother, Olga, is functional but emotionally distant. They love each other, But it's the kind of love that's grown quiet and practical, buried under schedules, silence, and different priorities. He doesn't feel seen by her, and she's too busy trying to save the world to realize her son is slowly disappearing into himself. When Elio is accidentally transported across the galaxy and mistaken as Earth's official representative, the situation seems absurd, but symbolically, it's perfect. This is a kid who has never felt heard finally being handed a cosmic microphone. At first, it's terrifying. He fumbles, stutters, and scrambles to keep up. His early interactions with the alien council are filled with panic and improvisation, and that's where his first real changes begin. He's forced to step into a role he never asked for. But as he navigates this space of absurd responsibility, he starts gaining tiny fragments of confidence. He doesn't become brave all at once. It's gradual, often clumsy. He tries, fails, tries again. It's a very human arc, and that's what makes it so engaging. His relationships with the alien beings are pivotal to his development. Each character he meets functions like a mirror or a mentor. There's an alien philosopher who challenges Elio to define what it means to speak for humanity. There's a playful, shape-shifting creature who bonds with him through shared emotions rather than words. There's a cold, calculating alien diplomat who immediately doubts Elio's identity and seeks to expose him. These aren't just decorative side characters. They each reflect an internal struggle Elio is dealing with. Fear, connection, truth, pressure. Through these interactions, he starts discovering not just how to act like an ambassador but what he truly believes humanity represents. And more importantly, who he is beneath the performance. Elio's biggest turning point comes when the lie unravels. His secret is revealed. He isn't the real ambassador. He isn't trained. He isn't even supposed to be there. But instead of trying to maintain the lie, Elio does something braver than he's ever done. He tells the truth. Not just about the misunderstanding, but about himself. He admits he's scared, insecure, and unsure. That moment, his confession in front of the Communiverse, is not only the emotional peak of the film, but also the moment his character transforms completely. What began as an accidental adventure becomes a personal reckoning. He doesn't become a hero by conquering others. He becomes one by understanding and accepting himself. That growth is powerful, and it reshapes every relationship around him. His mother, Olga Solis, undergoes her own arc that runs parallel to Elio's, and it's equally significant. She begins the story as a brilliant scientist chasing the stars, ambitious, focused, and slightly out of touch with the emotional needs of her son. Her identity is built around purpose and logic. When Elio disappears, that identity is shaken. She's not just fighting to find her son. She's forced to confront the ways she's unintentionally pushed him into isolation. Her growth isn't as flashy as Elio's, but it's just as meaningful. As the film progresses, we see her transition from a woman obsessed with reaching out into the universe to a mother finally understanding that the most important connection she needs to make is with the person closest to her. By the time they reunite, Olga isn't just relieved, she's changed. She listens more, hugs tighter, and begins to value the emotional over the scientific. Their final scenes together are filled with a quiet warmth, a soft kind of healing that feels completely earned. Even the side characters in the Alien Council have arcs of their own. One delegate, who originally viewed Elio with suspicion and contempt, eventually defends him after seeing the courage in his vulnerability. Another alien, previously amused by Elio's clumsy efforts, ends up mentoring him, recognizing that his flaws are actually strengths in disguise. These characters evolve not through major plot twists, but through moments of empathy, humor, and shared experience. Their acceptance of Elio, especially after learning the truth, becomes a statement in itself. Growth doesn't require perfection. It requires honesty. What's truly special about the character development in Elio is how interconnected it all is. Every character's arc influences someone else's. Elio's transformation pushes his mother to see him differently. The alien's reactions to Elio shape his view of humanity. Even the most seemingly minor characters play a role in nudging Elio toward self-discovery. This isn't a film where characters are just reacting to plot events. They're actively changing because of each other. Every decision, every confession, every moment of connection adds a layer to who they are. And that's what makes the film feel so alive. These aren't just characters, they're people. They laugh, they doubt, they grow. They start in one emotional place and end in another, not because a script says so, but because they've earned it. Watching Elio go from a nervous, imaginative kid to someone capable of standing before the galaxy and speaking from the heart is one of the most rewarding character journeys in recent animated storytelling. Watching his mother evolve from a distant genius to a present, emotionally open parent adds even more emotional weight. And watching the aliens evolve from caricatures into complex, thoughtful beings who learn from a human child ties it all together with surprising depth. Character development in Elio isn't a subplot. It's the reason the story works. It's the soul of the movie, and every scene, every line, and every choice is designed to remind us that growth is messy, brave, and beautiful. The performances in Elio, 2025, are the secret ingredient that makes this vibrant, cosmic tale hit close to home. Without a single actor ever appearing on screen, the voice cast manages to create a world that feels alive, emotional, and deeply personal. They don't just speak lines. They embody the heart of the characters, drawing audiences into an adventure that is as much about identity and connection as it is about aliens and outer space. Every performance is layered with care, and the result is a movie that feels grounded in real emotion, even when it takes place light years away from Earth. At the core of the film is Yonas Kibreab, who voices Elio Solis. His performance is one of the standout achievements of the entire film. From the very first scene, he captures the essence of Elio with startling precision. Elio isn't a stereotypical protagonist. He's anxious, dreamy, unsure of himself, and unsure of the world. Yonas brings all of that into his voice in ways that feel organic and natural. You can hear the slight hesitation when Elio speaks up in an unfamiliar environment, the wavering confidence when he tries to be brave, and the soft wonder when he sees something beautiful or unexpected. What makes this performance so special is its authenticity. Elio doesn't speak in neatly polished lines. He mumbles, trails off, and sometimes stumbles over his thoughts. That honesty in delivery helps the audience connect with Elio instantly. He feels like a real kid with real fears and real hopes. And as the story progresses and Elio finds his strength, not the kind that comes with fighting or shouting, but the quiet, resilient kind, you can hear the shift in his voice. It becomes stronger, steadier, more sure of itself, yet never loses the core vulnerability that defines the character. Yonas makes Elio's emotional growth feel lived in and deeply moving. Opposite him is America Ferrera as Olga Solis, Elio's mother, and she brings a completely different kind of energy to the film. Ferrera delivers a performance filled with poise, control, and emotional undercurrents that run just beneath the surface. Olga is a brilliant woman who's spent her life focused on science and exploration, but she's also a single mother, juggling immense responsibility while trying to raise a son who's growing further away from her emotionally. In the early scenes, Ferrera captures that tension beautifully. She's warm but distant, caring but distracted. Her voice reflects a mother who loves deeply but struggles to connect, not because she doesn't want to, but because she's lost in the weight of her work and her own expectations. As the film unfolds and Olga begins to see the world through her son's experiences, Ferrera lets the performance shift. There's more softness, more vulnerability, more emotional honesty. In the later scenes, her voice cracks not with theatrical drama, but with the quiet, aching realization of how much she's missed. The final moments between her and Elio are among the most powerful in the film. Not because of what's said, but because of how it's said, with rawness, with warmth, and with a long overdue sense of mutual understanding. Beyond the leads, the supporting cast in Elio adds a whole universe of personality to the story. The Alien Council is populated with creatures of every imaginable shape and size, and the voice actors behind them bring just as much variety and creativity to their performances. There's a council elder whose voice is calm and melodic, delivering each line with a sense of ancient wisdom that feels almost like music. Another alien is brash and loud, a character who initially mocks Elio but slowly comes to respect him, and the voice actor nails the transition from comic antagonist to reluctant ally with effortless charm. One of the most memorable alien voices is that of a character who communicates not just through words, but through emotion. The actor uses rhythm, tone, and breath to convey meaning in ways that feel almost nonverbal, and yet completely clear. These performances go far beyond quirky voices or sci-fi accents. They give depth and emotion to characters who could have easily become flat stereotypes or just comedic background noise. And then there's the character who acts as the film's antagonist, or at least the one who challenges Elio the most. A skeptical, calculating alien delegate who suspects Elio isn't who he claims to be. The voice actor plays this role with a perfect mix of suspicion and cold intelligence, delivering each line with the kind of precise, controlled edge that makes every word land with weight. There's no shouting or bluster here, just quiet tension, the kind that raises the stakes without ever needing to yell. When this character confronts Elio, the performance becomes a reflection of everything Elio is struggling with: fear, shame, doubt. And when the confrontation finally turns into a moment of unexpected understanding, the shift in tone is subtle, but deeply effective. Even the smallest characters in the film get moments to shine, thanks to a cast that understands how to make every line, no matter how short, feel meaningful. Whether it's a humorous one-liner from a comic sidekick or a heartfelt observation from an alien passing through, the voice work makes every moment count. The characters' emotional beats are amplified by how carefully each actor controls their delivery. When to pause, when to speed up, when to let silence do the work. There's a sense of rhythm to the performances that gives the entire film a heartbeat. What makes the performances in Elio so impressive is how they all work in harmony. No one tries to steal the spotlight. Every actor supports the emotional journey of the story, contributing to an atmosphere that is filled with both wonder and emotional depth. The film could have leaned heavily on visuals or action, but instead, it leans on character, and the actors rise to the occasion with performances that are sincere, textured, and full of life. By the end of the movie, you're not just remembering the cool visuals or the imaginative world building. You're remembering the voices. The way Elio sounds when he laughs for the first time in space. The way Olga whispers her son's name after realizing how much he's grown. The way an alien, who once doubted him, now speaks to him with respect. These moments don't just tell the story, they are the story. The cast gives voice to the film's biggest themes: belonging, bravery, identity, and connection. And they do it not with flashy delivery, but with truth. Performances like these don't just serve a script. They lift it. The direction in Elio, 2025, is more than just a guiding hand. It's a carefully orchestrated vision that transforms a coming-of-age story into an emotionally rich cosmic odyssey. Adrian Molina, taking the helm with deep sensitivity and creative ambition, doesn't just direct a film. He builds a universe that pulses with life, feeling, and meaning. From the pacing of a single line of dialogue to the sweeping visual symphony of an alien galaxy, every moment feels deliberate and thematically connected. This is a film where tone, mood, and character development are not just supported by the direction. They're defined by it. The film opens in a quiet, grounded reality. The first few minutes are slow, intimate, and observational. We see Elio in his comfort zone, his home, his drawings, his solitude. Molina directs these early sequences with remarkable restraint. There are no grand gestures here, no rush to spectacle. He lets us sit in the stillness of Elio's world. The shots linger. The atmosphere is gentle. The lighting is soft and melancholic. Through deliberate pacing and close compositions, Molina invites the audience to notice the unspoken. The silence between Elio and his mother, the way Elio withdraws from social settings, the subtle signs of a child who feels invisible. The emotional groundwork is laid without a single dramatic outburst, and this slow-burn approach makes what follows all the more impactful. When the sci-fi elements kick in, the directorial shift is smooth but unmistakable. The moment Elio is pulled through a mysterious cosmic portal, the tone changes from grounded realism to wide-eyed discovery. But instead of jarring the audience with a hard tonal break, Molina guides us into the unknown with a sense of awe and emotional continuity. Elio may be surrounded by alien wonders, but his fear, confusion, and curiosity keep the experience personal. The pacing picks up, but never loses control. The energy rises, but the camera still finds Elio's face in moments of overwhelm. This duality, of experiencing the vastness of the universe while never losing sight of one boy's emotional journey, is what defines the film's tone, and it's maintained masterfully throughout. One of the most striking elements of Molina's direction is his use of visual storytelling to reflect emotional states. This isn't just a colorful film, it's a psychologically expressive one. The visual design of the Communiverse changes based on Elio's feelings. When he's afraid, the space feels cold, geometrically rigid, and dimly lit. As he grows more confident, the world becomes brighter, more fluid, more harmonious. Color palettes are used with precision. Blues and purples during isolation and introspection. Warm golds and greens during moments of connection and growth. The director is using color and light not just to decorate scenes, but to mirror the emotional arc of the protagonist. Camera movement in the film is another subtle but powerful storytelling tool. During Elio's early encounters with the alien council, the camera stays low and close, reinforcing his smallness and discomfort in the larger world. Wide angles make the room feel massive and intimidating. As Elio begins to find his voice, the framing shifts. The camera becomes steadier, his shots more centered. By the time he stands up and tells the truth about who he is, the angles have flattened. The room is no longer towering over him. This kind of shot composition isn't flashy or obvious, but it's incredibly effective. Molina knows how to use visual language to say things the script doesn't need to spell out. Another bold choice is the film's tonal balance. Molina doesn't shy away from humor, but he treats it with care. Jokes land, but they never undercut serious moments. Quirky alien behavior is funny, but it's never played just for laughs. Comedy is used to ease tension, to build character, to humanize the strange. Likewise, emotional moments are not treated with melodrama. When Elio breaks down in front of the alien council, admitting he's not an ambassador, Molina directs the scene with quiet intensity. There's no swelling orchestral cue, no exaggerated dialogue, just stillness, silence, and a boy speaking the truth. It's powerful because it's real. The pacing slows again in this moment, giving the audience time to absorb every word. That confidence, to pause in the middle of a fast-moving film and let silence do the work, is a mark of direction that trusts the story and the audience. Molina's sense of rhythm is also noteworthy. The film moves with a natural cadence, alternating between moments of spectacle and reflection. After each big scene, a council debate, a dramatic alien encounter, a secret revealed, there's always a beat of stillness. A walk through a strange marketplace. A conversation with a quiet alien. A night spent looking up at unfamiliar stars. These reflective moments aren't filler, they're emotional anchors. They allow the audience to stay in sync with Elio, to process what he's feeling rather than just watching what he's doing. This pacing strategy gives the film emotional depth that lasts well beyond the runtime. Stylistically, Molina brings a unique blend of cultural sensitivity, visual fantasy, and emotional realism. There are scenes that look like animated paintings, filled with floating lights and drifting clouds, alien skies and sparkling starships, but the direction never lets the visuals overpower the story. Instead, the spectacle is always rooted in character. A vast alien world isn't just a location. It's a metaphor for how lost Elio feels. A glowing floating creature isn't just a cool design. It represents a new way of being seen and understood. Even the most fantastical moments serve a purpose. The final sequence, where Elio returns home, is directed with quiet dignity. There's no grand victory march. No flashing headlines. Just a boy walking back into a world that now looks a little different. Not because the world changed, but because he did. The way Molina frames this return, Elio and his mother sitting together in silence, then sharing a small, honest moment of connection, says everything without saying much at all. It's a masterstroke of subtlety. In every frame of Elio, Adrian Molina makes it clear that this isn't a story about saving the galaxy. It's a story about finding your place in it. His direction keeps the narrative focused, emotionally resonant, and visually rich without ever losing clarity. He crafts a tone that invites wonder but insists on honesty, a mood that feels hopeful but never naive. Whether guiding a quiet conversation or a grand alien ceremony, Molina's hand is steady, thoughtful, and deeply empathetic. His vision shapes every detail, from the rhythm of the scenes to the way characters are revealed through light, movement, and silence. And in doing so, he delivers a cinematic experience that feels at once otherworldly and deeply, unmistakably human. The cinematography in Elio, 2025, isn't just beautiful, it's emotionally intelligent. Every frame is designed with purpose, using lighting, framing, and movement not just to show the story but to feel it. Even though this is an animated film, the camera work behaves with the same precision and creativity as in live-action cinematography. From the quiet stillness of Elio's earthbound life to the cosmic grandeur of the Communiverse, the visual language constantly shifts to match his emotional journey. This is cinematography that listens to the characters and moves with them, not around them. Let's start with the way the camera treats Elio in the early parts of the film. In his home and school environment, the framing is tight and often low. We see him from angles that suggest a sense of smallness, like the world is pressing down on him. Shots linger a little longer than expected, catching glances, hesitations, even unfinished gestures. The color tones in these scenes are more muted, cool grays, dusty blues, soft shadows. Lighting is diffused and often directional, casting Elio in half-light, subtly communicating his in-between state. Not quite a child, not quite sure of himself. These choices aren't loud, but they're powerful. They visually capture the quiet discomfort of a kid who doesn't feel seen in his own world. Then comes the moment of transportation, and suddenly everything opens up. The cinematography goes from grounded to transcendent, and the transition is handled with fluid, dynamic movement. The camera swirls, dips, and expands as Elio is pulled across space and deposited into the Communiverse. This entire sequence is a visual symphony, color bursts, lens flares, and depth of field shifts that mimic the disorientation and awe Elio experiences. Lighting becomes bolder, with saturated purples, luminous pinks, deep space blues, and streaks of gold. The visual language tells us immediately, Elio has entered a world where everything is different, including the way he's seen. In the Communiverse, the cinematography leans into contrasts. Wide shots dominate in council chambers and cityscapes, often placing Elio at the very center of enormous alien environments. These visuals emphasize his isolation but also hint at his significance. He's alone, yes, but he's being watched, recognized, even revered. There's a recurring compositional choice where Elio is placed in the middle of a frame, surrounded by overwhelming size, and slowly, as the film progresses, those same wide shots change. He no longer looks swallowed by the environment, he becomes part of it. The framing adapts to reflect his internal transformation. Close-ups are used sparingly but effectively. When Elio has moments of doubt or revelation, the camera pulls in, not just to show his face, but to hold it. There's a stillness in these shots that allows emotion to settle. The lighting softens. Backgrounds blur slightly, giving full focus to Elio's eyes, his breath, the subtle movement in his expression. These aren't static images, they breathe. They allow space for the viewer to feel what Elio feels, creating intimacy even in a galaxy filled with alien spectacle. There are a few visually striking moments that stand out not just for their beauty, but for what they communicate. One of the most memorable is a scene where Elio sits under a massive sky dome filled with swirling constellations. The stars reflect in his eyes, and the lighting is a gentle glow of silver and blue. The camera floats slowly around him, creating a sensation of weightlessness. It's not just a gorgeous shot, it's a visual representation of Elio realizing, for the first time, that he belongs somewhere bigger than he ever imagined. Another highlight comes during his confession to the alien council. The lighting in the room dims, shadows stretch across the floor, and a narrow beam of light falls directly on Elio. The camera doesn't cut quickly, it holds the frame, forcing us to sit in the discomfort and bravery of that moment. As Elio speaks, the shadows slowly recede and soft ambient light fills the space again. The cinematography here does what words don't. It shows the moment of emotional breakthrough in a completely visual way. The film also plays with movement in clever ways. During high-energy scenes, such as chases through zero-gravity corridors or moments of chaotic alien activity, the camera adopts a more kinetic style. It bobs, rotates, even flips perspectives, mirroring the sensation of disorientation. But it never becomes overwhelming. Motion is always controlled, always purposeful. There's a rhythm to the cuts and camera sweeps that makes even the busiest sequences feel clear and grounded. Lighting in the film deserves its own praise. It's mood-defining. Emotional scenes are often lit with soft gradients that feel almost like watercolors. Light pools around characters in moments of vulnerability, drawing the eye inward. In more tense or uncertain scenes, lighting is directional and harsh, creating silhouettes and high contrasts that heighten emotional tension. There's even use of symbolic lighting. Elio stepping from shadow into light as he begins to accept himself, or his mother seen in the glow of her lab screen, slowly turning toward a warmer light as she reconnects with her son. These aren't random choices. They're visual metaphors crafted with care. The final scenes bring all of these visual tools together. As Elio and his mother reunite, the cinematography becomes softer, warmer, and more centered. Natural light streams through windows. The framing is tighter, more balanced. It no longer feels like the universe is towering over Elio. It feels like the world has met him on his level. The colors are gentler, more grounded, but still touched with the faint glow of everything he's experienced. The cinematography here isn't showy. It's emotional. It says that this journey, with all its galactic spectacle, has led to something quiet and profoundly personal. What makes the cinematography in Elio truly special is that it never loses sight of whose story this is. No matter how alien the world becomes, the visuals are always in service of Elio's emotional reality. Every light source, every camera angle, every framing choice is designed to pull the audience deeper into his experience. The result is a film that feels visually poetic, an animated canvas painted not just with color and shape, but with emotion, perspective, and meaning. It's cinematography that sees the soul of its character, and makes sure the audience sees it too. The editing and pacing of Elio, 2025, are finely tuned to the emotional rhythm of the story, shifting gears with purpose and guiding the audience through the journey with a steady, thoughtful hand. This isn't a film that charges forward at breakneck speed, nor is it one that lingers so long in its moments that it loses momentum. Instead, it finds a sweet spot, a pulse that adapts to the shifting emotional landscape, moving quickly when excitement builds, slowing down when characters need to breathe, and always keeping the viewer tethered to Elio's perspective. Right from the beginning, the film establishes a patient pace. The early scenes on Earth are quieter and more reflective. The editing here takes its time, letting moments play out naturally. Transitions between scenes feel almost seamless, more like gentle shifts than abrupt cuts. We move from Elio's bedroom to his mother's lab, from his sketchbook to his quiet daydreams. And it all flows with a rhythm that mirrors his withdrawn, observant nature. The cuts are soft, sometimes dissolving into one another, or using subtle match-on-action edits that suggest continuity even in contrast. These moments of calm aren't just there for exposition. They're carefully paced to draw the audience into Elio's inner world. This is where the emotional investment begins, and the editors know not to rush it. Then comes the moment Elio is transported into the Communiverse, and with it, the pacing changes. Suddenly the editing sharpens. The cuts come quicker, the transitions get bolder, and the rhythm pulses with energy and awe. There's a montage-like sequence as Elio tumbles through space, catching glimpses of alien landscapes and otherworldly beings, and the editing turns this into a cinematic whirlwind. The speed of the cuts doesn't feel overwhelming, though. It's exhilarating. It reflects Elio's own sense of confusion and amazement. The editors smartly use this contrast to wake up the audience, signaling that we've left the world we knew and stepped into something wild and unfamiliar. What's remarkable is how the film doesn't stay in this high-energy mode for too long. Once the novelty of the new setting fades, the editing starts to stretch out again, allowing the story to breathe. Dialogue scenes between Elio and the alien delegates are given room. The camera lingers longer on reactions. The rhythm slows just enough to allow for subtext, hesitation, and character development to surface. When Elio fumbles through his early diplomatic encounters, the editing captures every awkward pause, every tiny gesture of self-doubt. These pauses don't feel like missteps in pacing, they're necessary beats that let emotion settle. It's in these quiet gaps that we really begin to feel the weight of what Elio is experiencing. Throughout the middle act, the film keeps a playful balance between movement and rest. There are quick, snappy sequences, like Elio exploring alien customs or getting swept up in cosmic misunderstandings, where the editing leans into humor and momentum. The timing of jokes is impeccable, with punchlines landing thanks to quick reaction cuts and well-timed visual reveals. But just when it feels like the pace might be building too fast, the film slows down again. A quiet conversation. A still moment in an alien garden. A memory surfacing in Elio's mind. These tonal shifts are handled with care, and the editing guides us through them without jarring contrast. Transitions between scenes often use audio overlaps or visual motifs, like a recurring image of stars or the hum of alien machinery, which help create continuity across very different environments. Emotionally charged scenes are where the editing truly shines. In the film's emotional climax, when Elio confesses he's not really an ambassador, the sequence is almost entirely driven by the rhythm of the edit. The camera doesn't cut away too much. Instead, it holds. It waits. It listens. The longer the pause, the more intense the scene becomes. The editors understand that sometimes silence can be more powerful than dialogue. That restraint is what makes the moment hit so hard. We're not just told that Elio is scared or ashamed. We feel it because the scene isn't rushing to move on. When the reaction from the council comes, the pace shifts again, first tense and uncertain, then slowly softening into a kind of calm understanding. The rhythm mirrors the emotional release. Even in the final act, when things could easily ramp up for a more action-heavy resolution, the film remains loyal to its emotional pacing. The editing allows space for closure without dragging. Elio and his mother's reunion is handled with tenderness. The transitions are slower, the visuals more still, and the cuts more deliberate. There's a sense that the editors are allowing us to come down gently from the high of galactic diplomacy and return to something smaller, quieter, but no less important. There's also a musicality to the editing. The way scenes flow often feels like a song, each beat building on the last, swelling into emotional crescendos, then drifting back into calm. Visual rhythm is aligned with the soundtrack, and together they carry the audience through every mood swing and thematic shift. It's this harmony between sound, image, and timing that keeps the film engaging from start to finish. The pacing throughout Elio respects the audience. It doesn't assume short attention spans or race toward spectacle. It gives time to character. It lets emotional moments linger. It plays with rhythm, not just for variety, but to reflect the evolving mindset of its young protagonist. And above all, it maintains flow. Even as the film jumps between alien planets and human memories, political councils and personal epiphanies, the editing ensures everything feels like part of the same emotional current. Nothing feels out of place, and nothing overstays its welcome. In a film that could have easily leaned too hard into its sci-fi concept, it's the editing that holds everything together. It keeps the experience smooth, the energy balanced, and the emotion front and center. Whether the scene is moving at light speed or standing completely still, the pacing always feels right. Not because it's following a formula, but because it's following the heart of the story. The soundtrack and score of Elio, 2025, are more than just background music. They're the emotional lifeblood of the film. They don't simply accompany the story, they feel the story. Every note is placed with intention. Every silence is calculated. And the result is a sonic landscape that makes the emotional highs soar and the quiet lows linger. From the gentle hum of earthbound moments to the cosmic scale of the Communiverse, the music evolves alongside Elio, adapting to his emotional state and helping the audience navigate the vast, often overwhelming journey he's thrust into. The score begins subtly, almost invisibly, in Elio's early scenes. The music is light, atmospheric, and understated, barely more than a whisper of melody beneath the surface. It features soft piano lines, light strings, and the occasional electronic texture, creating a sense of quiet melancholy. This minimalist approach mirrors Elio's sense of isolation. He's a quiet kid in a loud world, and the score reflects that with music that chooses to observe rather than assert. You can feel the loneliness in the slow, careful pacing of the notes, in the pauses between phrases. The music in these moments doesn't lead the emotion, it shadows it, waiting in the background, mirroring Elio's tentative steps through his disconnected life. Then, as Elio is transported to the Communiverse, the soundtrack shifts dramatically, bursting into an explosion of sound and texture. It's as if the score finally breathes in the full scope of the universe, and with that breath comes a wave of sound, synths, layered harmonies, alien instruments, and soaring orchestral elements that crash together like galaxies colliding. But even in its grandeur, the music never overwhelms. It always centers Elio. When the visuals are loud and dazzling, the score leans into wonder rather than chaos. It builds excitement without noise. It captures the thrill of discovery without losing its emotional compass. The composition becomes a character in its own right, a guide through the unfamiliar, a translator for everything Elio can't quite express in words. One of the most striking features of the score is its use of recurring motifs. Early on, we hear a simple piano melody associated with Elio, soft, a little awkward, full of longing. It's a musical signature that appears throughout the film in different forms. When Elio is scared, it's slowed down, hollowed out. When he's curious, it's played with more bounce and lift. When he finds his voice and begins to embrace who he is, that same melody swells into a full orchestral theme, triumphant but still emotionally grounded. This transformation of a single theme mirrors Elio's own growth. It's not a brand new melody that plays in the film's most victorious moment. It's the same one from the beginning, now evolved. That's the emotional storytelling power of music at its best. Another motif emerges later in the film, tied to Elio's relationship with his mother. Their scenes are backed by a warmer, more organic sound, guitar strums, cello, and subtle vocal textures. This theme only fully reveals itself during their emotional reconciliation, where it merges with Elio's main theme to create a blend that feels both familiar and new. It's a perfect musical representation of two characters finally understanding each other. The way these themes intersect, fade, and reappear gives the film a deep musical memory. You may not consciously track every motif, but you feel them. They bring emotional consistency across the narrative, reinforcing Elio's experiences and deepening the connections between characters. Silence is another powerful tool the score uses. In several key scenes, the music doesn't swell, it vanishes. When Elio confesses his fears or feels overwhelmed by his role, the absence of music becomes the most honest sound in the room. These moments of quiet are not empty. They are full of weight. They force the viewer to focus on breath, on voice, on stillness. The silence is loud with emotion, and when the music returns, even in a whisper, it carries so much more meaning. The score respects those moments. It knows when to speak and when to step back. The blending of styles in the score is also worth highlighting. It doesn't sit neatly in one genre. It weaves together orchestral swells with sci-fi synths, uses strange alien tones that sound otherworldly but never distracting, and brings in acoustic textures to remind us of Earth, of childhood, of home. There are moments where the music sounds like it's coming from a place we've never been before. Unfamiliar rhythms, dissonant harmonies that resolve unexpectedly. And these choices add to the immersion of being in a universe that doesn't operate by our rules. But then, just as easily, the score will return to something personal, something grounded, as if reminding both Elio and the audience where we came from and why it matters. The final act of the film is where the music reaches its emotional peak. As Elio makes peace with himself and connects with the beings around him not by pretending to be a hero, but by being honest, the score expands. The orchestration builds, layering the original motifs with new harmonies and fuller instrumentation. There's a sense of flight, of lift, of becoming. It doesn't shout victory. Instead, it radiates peace. The final notes of the film are delicate and reflective, not booming and dramatic. They carry the feeling of a boy who has seen the stars but now sees himself. It's a musical exhale that feels just right. The soundtrack of Elio doesn't chase emotion, it creates it. It doesn't demand attention, yet it's impossible to ignore. It moves through the film like a current under the surface, shaping everything it touches, from the tone of a conversation to the pace of a revelation. Whether guiding wonder, holding sorrow, or simply watching a character breathe in silence, the music becomes the invisible thread tying everything together. It listens, it responds, and it tells the story just as powerfully as the characters themselves. The themes and messages in Elio, 2025, form the beating heart of the film, And while the story takes place in distant galaxies filled with alien civilizations and cosmic courts, it's ultimately about something far more intimate: identity, belonging, communication, vulnerability, and the deep human need to be seen for who we truly are. These aren't abstract ideas casually layered over sci-fi spectacle. They're tightly woven into every frame, every conversation, and every moment of growth Elio experiences on his journey. This isn't a film that preaches. It whispers, reflects, and reveals, often when the characters least expect it, and that's what gives its theme staying power. At its core, Elio is about identity, not just discovering who you are, but accepting it. Elio isn't a chosen hero. He doesn't begin his story as someone powerful or especially brave. He's a shy, creative, awkward kid who often feels out of sync with the world around him. The film uses this premise to explore what it means to be yourself in a universe that's constantly trying to define you. By accident, Elio is mistaken for Earth's ambassador, and suddenly he's forced to represent humanity. But here's the twist. He doesn't know how to speak for humanity, because he's still learning how to speak for himself. That conflict becomes the thematic backbone of the film. Every interaction in the Communiverse pushes him to question, who am I pretending to be, and who am I really? The film doesn't rush that realization. It lets Elio stumble through misunderstandings, self-doubt, and fear before he realizes that the most powerful thing he can offer isn't a speech or a strategy, it's honesty. That leads into another major theme: communication. But this film doesn't treat communication as just speaking. It's about understanding. Elio meets alien beings who don't share his language, customs, or ways of thinking. Some speak in tones, some through movement, some through emotion itself. These interactions force him to listen without expectation, to interpret beyond words, and to find new ways of connecting. The brilliance of this theme is how it mirrors Elio's relationship with his mother, Olga. Their struggle isn't dramatic or overt. It's in the pauses, the missed chances, the way they care for each other but speak past each other. Through his journey with the aliens, Elio learns how to communicate across differences, and that lesson slowly carries over into the way he reconnects with his mom. It's a subtle but powerful message. Real communication isn't about having the right words. It's about having the courage to understand and be understood. Another deeply resonant theme is vulnerability. Elio spends much of the film pretending to be something he's not, afraid that if others saw the real him, they'd reject him. It's a feeling anyone who has ever felt out of place can recognize. But the story carefully builds toward the realization that vulnerability isn't weakness. It's the key to connection. When Elio finally admits the truth to the alien council, that he's not an ambassador, not a representative of anything, just a scared kid, they don't laugh or dismiss him. Instead, they listen. They hear the honesty, the courage it took to speak up, and they respond with empathy. That moment lands not because it's dramatic, but because it's raw. The film uses it to deliver a message with real emotional weight. You don't have to pretend to be important to matter. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is to admit you don't have the answers, and that's when real growth begins. Belonging is another core theme that echoes through every layer of the film. Elio doesn't feel like he fits in on Earth, and when he first arrives in the Communiverse, he's even more lost. But as he begins to interact with beings who are just as strange, uncertain, or misunderstood as he is, something changes. He realizes that belonging isn't about fitting into a space that already exists. It's about creating space, finding or building a community where differences are welcomed and identities can unfold freely. The film makes it clear that true belonging doesn't require you to change who you are. Instead, it asks you to show up fully as yourself, flaws and all, and trust that the right people, or aliens, will meet you there. The film also explores the idea of responsibility and representation. Elio never asked to speak for Earth, but he ends up doing it anyway. Through that experience, he learns that representation is complicated. It's not just about speaking, but listening, learning, and holding space for others. Even when he steps into the role by accident, he begins to realize that being seen as a symbol or leader means grappling with your own uncertainties in public. But what the film does so well is show that you don't have to be perfect to represent something meaningful. By staying true to his feelings, Elio represents something far more authentic than authority. He represents openness, humility, and emotional courage. There are also quieter, secondary themes that ripple throughout the film. The bond between parent and child, strained but unbroken. The tension between science and emotion, embodied in Olga's practical world and Elio's imaginative one. The idea that exploration isn't just about reaching faraway places, but about reaching inside yourself. These themes aren't hammered in. They're revealed through dialogue, through visuals, through repeated symbols. A drawing in a sketchbook. A half-finished sentence. A moment of eye contact across a vast room. What makes the themes in Elio so powerful is that they feel lived in. They don't arrive with fanfare or moralizing. They unfold gradually, in tandem with the character's journey, and they invite the audience to reflect rather than conclude. The film doesn't tell you what to think. It asks, when was the last time you felt out of place? When did you last pretend to be something you weren't? Who really sees you for who you are? The answers to those questions don't come in speeches. They come in moments, quiet, funny, painful, beautiful, and that's where Elio finds its depth. It leaves you thinking not about galaxies or alien species, but about the human heart. About being afraid and being brave anyway. About reaching out into the unknown not just to explore it, but to be changed by it. The visual effects and CGI in Elio, 2025, aren't just eye candy. They're the very fabric of the film's storytelling, woven into every frame to build a world that feels not only spectacular, but surprisingly intimate. This is a film that leans heavily into digital world building, and yet the visual effects never feel cold or artificial. They hum with creativity, emotion, and character. Every swirl of interstellar mist, every gleaming alien city, every surreal creature is designed not just to look amazing but to mean something. The effects don't distract, they transport. They create a fully imagined universe that feels lived in, emotional, and inviting. From the very beginning, it's clear that the film's visual team wasn't just focused on detail, they were focused on harmony. The environments, lighting, movement, and animation style work in sync to create a unified aesthetic that doesn't scream, "Look what we made," but rather says, "Come explore this with us." The transition from Earth to the Communiverse is one of the most visually stunning moments in the film, and it's a showcase of how CGI can be used not just for spectacle, but for emotional storytelling. Elio isn't just traveling through a portal, he's being emotionally and psychologically overwhelmed by the unknown. The effects mirror that perfectly. Colors burst and stretch like emotions exploding. Gravity distorts. Light pulses to the rhythm of his heartbeat. It's dazzling, but it's also deeply personal. Once in the Communiverse, the visual effects shift gears. The goal isn't just to impress. It's to build an entire civilization of beings, architecture, technology, and physics that feel coherent yet completely unlike anything we've seen before. The Alien Council chamber, for example, doesn't look like a traditional space senate. It floats, reconfigures, and changes based on the emotional energy of the room. This isn't just smart world building, it's emotionally driven design. The CGI isn't just forming shapes, it's expressing how these beings communicate and live. It gives the setting personality. The council's translucent walls ripple like water when the mood shifts. The floor folds upward into conversation circles. These details don't scream for attention, but they deepen immersion. Every digital asset serves a purpose. The character designs are another massive achievement. The alien species Elio encounters aren't just strange, they're expressive. They have unique motion patterns, skin textures, eye shapes, and even the way their limbs articulate all feel purpose-built for who they are. Some are gelatinous and soft, others crystalline and rigid. And yet, they all move with believable weight and react with emotional subtlety. That's not easy to pull off in CGI, especially when the designs are so abstract, but it's done here with finesse. One of the film's strengths is its refusal to limit the aliens to humanoid forms. Instead, the effects embrace fluidity, asymmetry, and biological diversity, and still manage to make these characters feel approachable, even lovable. Despite being an animated film, Elio gives off the illusion of practical textures, materials that feel like they have real weight. Metallic surfaces reflect light differently than stone. Glowing organisms emit soft ambient light, and even clothing has folds that move with natural physics. The lighting systems used in the CGI pipeline clearly took cues from real-world cinematography. There's a warm bounce light during quiet interior scenes, sharp contrast during moments of tension, and soft cosmic glows in more spiritual or transformative moments. These lighting effects are not just technically impressive, they're narratively functional. They guide the eye, establish mood, and deepen our emotional connection to what we're seeing. And then there's the use of scale. The film uses visual effects to shift perspectives dramatically. One moment, Elio is dwarfed by a towering alien tribunal. The next, he's curled up in a quiet pocket of space with a creature that barely speaks. The transitions between these environments are smooth and stunning. Camera movements through these massive digital spaces feel weightless but grounded. The sense of scale is never arbitrary. It always reflects how Elio is feeling. When he's anxious, the rooms are too big. When he's understood, the spaces feel closer. That's visual storytelling at its most refined. Interestingly, although the film is fully animated, it still feels like it borrows from practical visual techniques. The textures and materials often feel tangible, almost touchable. The CGI behaves like it was lit and shot in a physical world. Shadows fall naturally. Reflections aren't exaggerated. Depth of field is used subtly to focus attention and create intimacy. This hybrid of digital craft and practical illusion gives Elio its emotional realism. You believe these places exist, not because they're photorealistic, but because they're emotionally real. One of the most clever uses of CGI comes in moments of emotional transformation. When Elio has internal breakthroughs, the world around him responds. The color palette shifts. The environment ripples. In one scene, when he opens up about his fears, the stars in the sky reorganize themselves into calming spirals. It's not literal, it's symbolic, but the effects are done with such subtlety that it doesn't feel gimmicky. It feels like the universe is listening to him. This is where the CGI becomes more than a visual tool. It becomes an emotional language. Even the film's transitions between worlds, memories, or emotional states are handled with VFX that feel poetic rather than mechanical. A cloud becomes a memory. A breath becomes a sound wave that ripples across a planet. A drop of Elio's tear becomes the seed of a new idea in another being's mind. These aren't just flashy ideas, they're narrative bridges. The CGI isn't there to distract, it's there to connect. What makes the visual effects in Elio truly stand out is their restraint. For all the wild imagination and digital brilliance on display, the film never loses focus. The effects don't try to steal the scene. They work in harmony with story, character, music, and emotion. They never try to prove how advanced they are. They just do their job, and they do it beautifully. The result is a world that doesn't just look cool, it feels true. It invites you in, asks you to stay a while, and makes you believe that somewhere in the galaxy, this place could exist. And more importantly, it makes you feel like you belong there too. The set design and locations in Elio, 2025, are an imaginative triumph, turning abstract ideas of space diplomacy and intergalactic adventure into immersive environments that feel both fantastical and oddly familiar. Even though this is a fully animated film, the attention to detail in the production design gives every location a sense of place, personality, and function. Nothing feels generic or overly stylized for the sake of spectacle. Each setting has a story of its own, and every prop or piece of architecture is designed not just to fill the frame, but to support the emotional and narrative journey of the characters, especially Elio. Let's start with Earth, which is intentionally grounded and understated. Elio's home, his mother's lab, the schoolyard, even his bedroom. These aren't high-tech or overly designed. They're familiar in the best way. The colors are muted, the rooms are filled with lived-in textures, and every item on a desk or shelf feels like it belongs to a real person. His bedroom isn't spotless, it's creative chaos. Sketches taped to the wall, a half-finished sculpture, a corner where dreams and insecurities coexist. The design captures Elio's internal world. Introverted, imaginative, slightly lonely. His mother's lab, by contrast, is clinical and orderly, all white boards and wires, reflecting her logic-driven mindset. The subtle contrast between their spaces isn't just for aesthetic effect. It shows their emotional distance. These environments don't just look right, they feel right. You understand the characters before they even speak. Then comes the massive shift to the Communiverse, and with it, a stunning evolution in design. The alien worlds Elio visits don't rely on the usual clichés of shiny space stations or chrome-drenched cities. Instead, the production design embraces diversity in form, color, and function. The Alien Council Chamber, for example, is breathtakingly unconventional. It doesn't look like a courtroom or a throne room. It's a multi-layered floating structure that responds to emotion. The walls ripple. The ceiling breathes. The floor sometimes rearranges itself to facilitate different kinds of dialogue. It's organic, fluid, and symbolic. This isn't just cool sci-fi architecture. It's a reflection of the values of the species that built it. Diplomacy through feeling, not force. Throughout the Communiverse, every location feels like it was designed by a different civilization, each with its own cultural logic. There are cities built into the backs of massive creatures, glowing forests that pulse with sound instead of light, floating islands that rotate to simulate different kinds of gravity. And yet, none of it feels random. The production design team clearly asked the right questions. How do these beings live? What do they value? What does their environment say about their identity? That's why the alien settings are so effective. They're not just strange for the sake of being strange. They're deeply intentional. A species that communicates through color lives in a city made of crystal that refracts light into speech. Another that relies on empathy builds soft, echoing structures designed for resonance. The settings extend the storytelling. Even the transitional spaces, the corridors, shuttles, and skybridges, are full of personality. They don't feel like filler backgrounds. Instead, they're places where real moments happen. Elio often finds himself in these in-between areas, and they're designed with openness and flow, mirroring the fact that he's between childhood and maturity, Earth and the stars, being someone and becoming someone. The props within these spaces are another layer of design excellence. Tools, gadgets, and alien artifacts are all functional but full of detail. They don't require exposition. You instinctively understand their use through visual language. This is the kind of world building where the audience is trusted to feel their way through the unfamiliar. One of the most emotionally striking locations is a quiet alien garden, where Elio has a moment of vulnerability. The garden is otherworldly, full of bioluminescent plants and floating spores, but it feels tranquil and safe. The space reacts to Elio's mood. Soft lights pulse when he speaks. The air thickens slightly when he grows emotional. This isn't just a backdrop for character development. It is the character development. The set becomes an active participant in the story. It absorbs emotion, reflects it, and helps Elio express things he didn't know how to say in any other setting. The film also plays with contrasts beautifully. The sterile, angular design of Earth's scientific spaces is vastly different from the fluid, adaptive environments of the alien worlds. But when Elio returns home at the end of the film, there are small visual changes. His room looks brighter, his mother's lab has a few new organic shapes and colors. It's subtle, but it shows that the two worlds, his internal and external, Earth and the stars, are beginning to blend. That's smart design. It tells a story without a single word of dialogue. And finally, the use of color in the set design is essential to the film's tone. Earth is colored in cooler hues, grays, blues, muted greens, until Elio's journey begins. In the Communiverse, the palette explodes. Every location has a unique visual signature, from pastel nebula hues to deep, saturated jewel tones. These aren't just pretty colors, they signal emotional shifts. When Elio is afraid, colors are sharp and high contrast. When he's confident, the tones are warmer and more unified. The design uses color as emotional shorthand, pulling the audience deeper into the story without them even realizing it. The settings and props in Elio don't just decorate the film. They give it depth, shape, personality, and meaning. Every location is an extension of the characters and themes. Every object, structure, or spatial choice is telling a story. Whether you're on a distant planet or in a cluttered childhood bedroom, the world around Elio always feels authentic, not because it looks real, but because it's built on truth. It reflects how he feels, what he's learning, and who he's becoming. That's the power of great production design. It doesn't just show you a world. It lets you live in it. The dialogue and script of Elio, 2025, are finely tuned instruments of emotional honesty, wit, and wonder. Every line feels like it belongs, not just to the character speaking it, but to the exact moment it's spoken. The writing never feels overwritten or theatrical, yet it manages to echo with depth and clarity. This is a film where the words do more than explain the plot. They carve out emotional truth, stitch together humor and vulnerability, and give shape to the invisible growth taking place within Elio and those around him. The balance between simplicity and poignancy is masterful. You don't get the sense that characters are delivering lines from a script. You feel like you're eavesdropping on a very personal, very real journey. Elio's dialogue in particular is crafted with such care. At the start of the film, he speaks hesitantly, often trailing off or using more questions than statements. The writers give him a voice that feels age-appropriate without ever talking down to him or making him a cliché. He's thoughtful, imaginative, and unsure of himself, and that all comes through in his words. He says things that are funny without trying to be, and emotional without reaching for melodrama. There's a line early on when he says to his mom, "I feel like everybody else was given a map, and I'm just guessing." It's soft, almost a throwaway, but it instantly connects. It's not profound because it's poetic, it's profound because it's true. As Elio is thrust into the alien world of the Communiverse, the script leans into cleverness and cross-cultural confusion. There's sharp wit in how Elio tries to interpret alien customs, and some of the funniest moments come from his attempts to translate Earth concepts in a completely foreign context. The film gets a lot of mileage out of misunderstanding, not just for laughs, but for empathy. The dialogue here is crisp, fast-moving, and packed with personality. One alien tries to understand the concept of embarrassment, and ends up describing it as the heart performing a glitch. That kind of writing is imaginative, quirky, and completely in sync with the film's tone. But the real magic of the script is how it handles emotional weight, without losing its lightness. There's a pivotal scene where Elio admits he's not who the aliens think he is. He says, "I didn't come here to speak for anyone. I can barely speak for myself." The silence that follows is just as important as the line itself. The writers know when to stop talking and let a moment land. And they trust the audience to sit in that pause, to feel the truth of it without needing it explained. That kind of restraint takes confidence, and it's what gives the dialogue its power. The exchanges between Elio and his mother, Olga, are another highlight. They're not filled with grand revelations or teary monologues. Instead, the script opts for nuance, half-finished sentences, awkward silences, and words that carry more meaning in what's unsaid. There's one beautifully understated moment when Elio, after everything he's been through, says to her, "You don't have to understand it all. Just don't look away." That line, so simple, lands with incredible emotional force. It encapsulates the shift in their relationship. The dialogue works because it earns its impact. It doesn't push too hard. It lands gently and truthfully. Throughout the film, the dialogue is laced with motifs and callbacks that create emotional resonance. Phrases said early in the story return with new meaning later. Words Elio once used in fear are spoken again with courage. It's not just clever, it's storytelling through language. The writing tracks the emotional evolution of the characters through how they speak, what they withhold, and how their voices change over time. And while much of the dialogue is intimate and character-driven, the script also manages to deliver moments of surprising lyricism. An alien elder at one point describes Earth as a lonely voice humming into the void, hoping someone will sing back. It's a breathtaking sentence, one that could easily feel out of place, but in the moment, it fits perfectly. It captures the emotional core of the story without spelling it out. The supporting characters also shine thanks to the dialogue. Each one has a distinct voice. Whether it's a sarcastic alien bureaucrat, a poetic plant-like being, or a nervous interpreter who communicates through movement and vibration, their lines reflect their worldview. The writers didn't just give them things to say, they gave them perspective, humor, and rhythm. The dialogue never blends into one tone. It's rich with variety and filled with heart. Even the moments of exposition are handled gracefully. In a film that juggles alien politics, human emotion, and world-shifting discoveries, there's a lot that could have been delivered in clunky info dumps. But the script avoids that by embedding exposition into character. When Elio learns something new, it's not because someone gives him a monologue. It's because he asks a question, stumbles onto a misunderstanding, or tries to explain something and fails. That organic approach to information makes the world feel real, and the conversations feel alive. Ultimately, the script's greatest strength is how it never forgets who the story is about. Everything is filtered through Elio's voice, his point of view. The language grows as he grows. The tone shifts as he finds clarity. And by the time the credits roll, you realize you've not only watched a young boy explore the universe, you've listened to him find his voice. The dialogue didn't just deliver a plot. It carried us through a transformation. And that's what makes the writing so unforgettable. Elio, 2025, doesn't just sit comfortably within a single genre. It dances between them, bends their rules, and then quietly rewrites the ones it doesn't need. On the surface, it may look like a family-friendly animated sci-fi adventure, the kind where a quirky kid stumbles into an intergalactic mix-up and goes on a colorful journey across the stars. But almost immediately, you realize this isn't a typical space odyssey. The film plays with genre expectations like a storyteller who knows the classics by heart, but isn't afraid to question them. Science fiction is the most obvious framework, but Elio doesn't lean into the genre with loud explosions or high-tech jargon. Instead, it uses sci-fi as a lens for introspection. This isn't about space battles, alien invasions, or saving the galaxy. There's no evil empire to topple or universe-ending weapon to destroy. Instead, the genre is used to explore something far more personal: identity, belonging, and connection. The alien worlds, languages, and politics are wildly inventive, but they all exist to serve the emotional core of the story. That's a bold choice in a genre that often prioritizes scale over soul. And it works beautifully. Adventure is definitely in the mix, but Elio subverts the usual tropes of the wide-eyed hero's journey. Elio doesn't get a mentor who tells him what to do. He doesn't train to become stronger. He doesn't even want the role he's been given. He's not a reluctant hero who becomes a confident leader. He's a deeply vulnerable kid who learns that being honest and emotionally open is more powerful than pretending to be brave. Most adventure films rely on escalation. Bigger stakes, bigger risks, bigger set pieces. Elio moves the other way. The further we go into the cosmos, the more inward the story turns. Instead of becoming about saving others, it becomes about understanding yourself. That's a huge genre pivot, and it makes the film stand out in a space where spectacle usually drives the story. There's also a healthy dose of comedy, but again, the film doesn't chase the easy laugh. The humor comes from character, not punchlines. Elio's awkwardness, the miscommunications with aliens, and the strange customs of the Communiverse all provide genuinely funny moments. But the jokes are always grounded in truth. You're not laughing at anyone. You're laughing because you recognize the confusion, the discomfort, the honesty of being human in a place where nothing makes sense. The humor never undercuts the emotion. It's layered in carefully, allowing the story to breathe without ever becoming a parody of itself. That balance is hard to pull off, but Elio does it with confidence. When it comes to drama, the film takes itself seriously, but never too seriously. It trusts that its audience, even the younger ones, can handle emotional depth. The conflicts aren't driven by villains or danger, but by internal struggle. Elio's fear of not being good enough, his complex relationship with his mother, the pressure of being seen when he doesn't feel ready. These are the real stakes. And they're treated with honesty. There's no dramatic musical sting every time he cries, no sweeping speech that fixes everything. The drama comes from real, small, powerful moments. A look across a room. A sentence left unfinished. A moment of silence that says everything. That's not typical for a sci-fi adventure, and it's exactly what gives the film its emotional impact. Even within the genre of animated films, Elio plays against type. Most animated adventures lean on fast pacing, constant action, or exaggerated character behavior. Here, the pacing is reflective. There are quiet scenes, slow build-ups, and conversations that linger. The animation isn't about wild slapstick or exaggerated movement. It's expressive, detailed, and full of nuance. The film respects the intelligence of its audience. It assumes kids are capable of handling complexity, and that adults can be moved by sincerity without irony. In a genre often tempted by spectacle, Elio chooses stillness. That's not a gimmick, it's a statement. And when it comes to genre clichés, the film dances around them with surprising grace. The mistaken identity setup? Classic. But instead of using it for hijinks or power fantasy, it becomes a tool to explore imposter syndrome and emotional growth. The Alien Tribunal? Feels familiar at first, but then turns into a mirror for Elio's inner conflict rather than a courtroom drama. The misunderstood child with a scientist parent? We've seen it, but Elio avoids the usual parent learns to loosen up arc and instead shows both characters growing toward each other in a way that feels earned and fresh. Every time you think you know where a scene is going, it pivots. Not with a twist for the sake of shock, but with a subtle shift that keeps the story emotionally honest. Even genre staples like the big speech moment are reimagined. Elio doesn't win the aliens over by making a grand declaration about humanity's greatness. He tells them the truth, that he's scared, that he doesn't have answers, and that he doesn't know how to represent an entire planet when he barely knows how to represent himself. That speech lands not because it's dramatic, but because it's vulnerable. And that flips the genre playbook on its head. So while Elio comfortably inhabits the categories of sci-fi, adventure, animation, and coming of age, it never lets those labels define its limits. Instead, it uses them as jumping-off points to explore deeper territory. It borrows the tools of its genres, then reshapes them to serve a story that's more interested in emotional resonance than formula. It's not about reinventing the wheel. It's about turning the wheel toward a destination that's unexpectedly human. That's what makes its genre execution feel so fresh, so full of life, and so hard to forget. Elio, 2025, doesn't just aim to entertain, it aims to connect. And it does so with remarkable precision, weaving together moments of joy, vulnerability, surprise, and wonder in a way that makes it almost impossible for the audience to stay passive. This is the kind of film that sneaks up on you emotionally. You might walk in expecting colorful aliens, space portals, and funny misunderstandings, but what you walk away with is something far more layered. An emotional journey that sticks with you, lives in your thoughts long after the credits roll, and quietly invites you to return for another watch just to feel it all over again. Right from the beginning, the film builds a personal bridge between Elio and the audience. He's not a superhero or a chosen one. He's a kid who feels like an outsider in his own world. That's not just relatable, it's universal. Every viewer, regardless of age, has at some point felt misplaced, misunderstood, or overwhelmed. The way the film taps into that emotional current is subtle but potent. The dialogue isn't dramatic, but it's honest. The reactions aren't exaggerated, but they're sincere. And because of that, when Elio gets whisked into space, we don't feel like we're watching a fantasy. We feel like we're being taken along with him. The emotional highs and lows are beautifully balanced. There are moments that absolutely earn laughter, often through Elio's awkwardness or the delightful absurdity of alien etiquette. There's a scene where he tries to communicate with a jellyfish-like ambassador through interpretive dance because he thinks it's their language, only to find out it was their version of a courtroom ritual. It's hilarious not because it's slapstick, but because it's rooted in his desperate need to belong. That kind of humor has staying power. It comes from empathy, not antics. But then, just as quickly, the film can deliver a scene that catches you off guard with its emotional weight. A quiet exchange between Elio and his mom, spoken not in anger or melodrama, but in the kind of hushed frustration that only comes from years of missed connections, hits like a stone in your chest. The film doesn't tell you how to feel. It simply shows you something real, and lets the emotion bloom on its own. And because you're already invested in the characters, those scenes resonate deeply. You care not just about what's happening, you care why it's happening. There are also moments of awe that elicit genuine wonder. When Elio first steps into the Communiverse, the visual spectacle isn't just there to dazzle the eyes. It's a moment that reawakens childlike curiosity. The floating architecture, the species that communicate through color or scent, the way time seems to slow and bend around emotion. It's not just cool sci-fi, it's emotional world-building. These are the kinds of moments that inspire gasps, not just for what you see, but for how it makes you feel. The film never forgets that wonder and emotion go hand in hand. It doesn't just want you to look. It wants you to feel what Elio feels in those moments of discovery. Audience engagement goes beyond immediate reactions. It lives in the aftermath of the experience. Elio is the type of film that prompts reflection, and often long after it's over. Parents will walk away thinking about how they communicate with their kids. Kids will see their own social awkwardness or isolation mirrored on screen and feel seen. And everyone in between will recognize that gnawing feeling of trying to be enough in a world that expects you to have it all figured out. The questions the film poses aren't loud or dramatic, but they're powerful. Who decides who we are? How do we learn to belong? What does it really mean to speak for ourselves? Because of its layered storytelling, the film also invites repeat viewings. The first time through, you might get swept up in the visual magic and Elio's journey. The second time, you notice how certain lines echo each other across different scenes. You catch how music swells during specific emotional beats. You see how even the background characters reflect the central theme of emotional expression. This depth makes the film feel richer with each watch, like a story that continues revealing itself the more time you spend with it. And maybe one of the most engaging aspects is that Elio invites conversation. It doesn't answer every question. It doesn't wrap up every thread with a neat bow. It leaves space for viewers to bring their own interpretations, their own feelings. Kids might want to talk about what their ambassador moment would be. Adults might reflect on what part of themselves they hide, because they fear being misunderstood. In that way, the film becomes a shared experience, a launching point for dialogue across generations. It doesn't preach, but it provokes thought in the gentlest and most effective way. So when it comes to audience engagement, Elio checks every box and then scribbles new ones in the margins. It makes you laugh, it makes you think, it stirs your heart and tickles your imagination. It's not the kind of film you just watch. It's the kind of film you feel. It earns your attention and rewards it with emotion, wonder, and a quiet invitation to see yourself a little differently than you did before. When you stack Elio, 2025, against its genre peers, especially within the family-friendly sci-fi adventure space, it doesn't just stand out. It sidesteps the obvious comparisons and quietly carves out its own identity. This isn't another hyperactive, joke-a-minute space romp or a galaxy-saving epic with a wisecracking sidekick and a destiny-fulfilling protagonist. Instead, Elio leans into emotional vulnerability and introspective storytelling in a way that feels surprisingly fresh for animated science fiction. It respects the intelligence of younger audiences and the emotional complexity of older ones, something few films manage to do without leaning too far in either direction. Let's take a look at comparisons to Pixar's own catalog. Most would instinctively look to Lightyear for surface similarities. Both are space-set, Pixar-branded, visually rich sci-fi stories. But the difference is immediate. Where Lightyear focused on action, nostalgia, and time travel concepts in a high-octane package, Elio is more inward-looking and character-driven. Lightyear was about proving oneself through action. Elio is about discovering oneself through feeling. The emotional core of Elio is far closer to Inside Out or Soul, but even there, it feels distinct. Those films externalized internal experiences through metaphor, emotions as characters, souls as preborn personalities, whereas Elio takes real emotional isolation and simply places it in a cosmic context. It's not trying to explain feelings. It's showing them through interaction, silence, awkwardness, and growth. You could also make comparisons to Lilo and Stitch, another tale of a misunderstood child and their extraterrestrial misadventures. But Elio trades the zany chaos of Stitch for a much more reflective journey. There are no montages of destruction here, no alien on Earth hijinks. This is more about the emotional gap between who we are and who we're expected to be. That's a very different angle from what most sci-fi kids films aim for, where identity is often simplified into hero versus villain, or fit-in versus standout. Elio doesn't ask if he'll save the day. It asks whether he can be himself and be accepted for it, even when the stakes are galactic. Compared to films like The Mitchells vs. the Machines, which blend family themes with visual chaos and genre parody, Elio takes a softer approach. While Mitchell's leaned into overstimulation and a barrage of gags with heart at its core, Elio opts for space to breathe. It doesn't race toward an emotional climax. It lets the weight of moments settle. The emotional architecture is quieter, but no less powerful. It invites you to lean in rather than sit back and laugh. That kind of restraint is rare in modern animated storytelling, especially when sci-fi is involved. In terms of narrative structure, it also breaks away from typical genre formulas. Most adventure stories follow a clear beat structure. Call to action, refusal, training, transformation, final battle. Elio twists this. The call to action is accidental. There's no refusal, just confusion. There's no training sequence. No mentor. And no final confrontation in the traditional sense. The film builds tension not through external obstacles, but internal reckoning. Instead of a fight to save the world, the climax is a raw, quiet confession that changes everything. That's a major shift from the typical save the planet arcs of films like WALL-E or Treasure Planet. Elio isn't about saving, it's about understanding. Even if you look outside animation and into live-action sci-fi with coming-of-age elements, films like Ender's Game or A Wrinkle in Time, you'll notice that Elio avoids the usual path of burdening its young protagonist with world-altering consequences. There's no chosen one mythology. No one's keeping ancient secrets from him. He's not a vessel for prophecy. He's just a boy. His importance comes not from what he is, but from what he feels. That's a radical redefinition of significance in a genre obsessed with grand design. Tonally, it also sits in a space that few other films dare occupy. Not fully comedic, not overly dramatic, and certainly not action-heavy. Elio creates a mood that's tender, imaginative, and oddly intimate. It's closer to My Neighbor Totoro in spirit than it is to Guardians of the Galaxy. That slower rhythm, the emotional vulnerability, and the almost dreamlike transitions between scenes are what give it its unique texture. It doesn't feel like it's trying to be like anything. It feels like it's finally doing what many other films only brush up against. And from a franchise or director standpoint, Elio also represents something different in Pixar's evolving voice. It's not as concept-driven as Inside Out or Coco, nor as culturally rooted in a specific place. Instead, it's emotionally rooted in a universal space. That unshakable feeling of not belonging. It might not be the most visually bombastic or fast-paced story in Pixar's lineup, but it might be one of the most emotionally sincere. That sincerity, paired with bold storytelling choices, is what separates it from the crowd. In a cinematic landscape full of noise, Elio whispers, and somehow says more. Elio, 2025, might tell its story with glowing portals, sentient constellations, and councils of alien diplomats. But beneath all that cosmic creativity lies a film rich with symbolism and layered metaphors that deepen the emotional impact far beyond its surface. This isn't just an animated adventure. It's a narrative where nearly every design choice, recurring image, and character beat is doing double duty, telling one story on the outside and another in the emotional undercurrent. The very premise of Elio being mistaken as Earth's ambassador isn't just a fun twist, it's a potent metaphor. It represents the universal experience of being expected to perform, to represent something bigger than yourself before you're even ready to represent your own truth. Elio becomes a stand-in for all those who have been thrust into roles they didn't ask for, who feel out of place in the world around them, whether socially, culturally, or emotionally. His journey isn't about proving he is that ambassador. It's about understanding who he is without the mask of expectation. It's not just a plot point. It's a symbolic dive into imposter syndrome and emotional displacement. One of the most striking visual metaphors in the film is the use of light. In many scenes, Elio is framed with small pockets of illumination, moonlight through blinds, stars flickering overhead, a beam from a communication console. The use of light often reflects Elio's state of mind. In early scenes, it's harsh, stark, cutting across his face as if separating parts of him he's not yet comfortable with. As he grows into himself, the lighting softens. In the Communiverse, ambient light is alive, responding to emotion rather than logic. This isn't just visual flair, it's the symbolic contrast between Earth's rigidity and the fluid empathy of the alien world. It's about being seen in a world that reflects, rather than interrogates, your feelings. Another recurring motif is the idea of translation. Communication between species isn't handled by simple subtitles or tech. It's often messy, interpretive, or poetic. Elio's difficulty in expressing himself and understanding others becomes a broader metaphor for human communication. How even people who speak the same language can misunderstand one another. The alien races who communicate through scent, rhythm, or visual waves aren't just sci-fi inventions. They're metaphors for the diversity of emotional expression. Not everyone processes the world verbally. Not everyone connects through logic. The film uses this to explore how emotional fluency, the ability to interpret, feel, and respond with empathy, is more powerful than being correct. The use of floating architecture and open-ended space in the design of the Communiverse serves as a metaphor for possibility and vulnerability. There are no locked doors, no sharp corners. Everything is soft-edged and suspended, like ideas in motion. Compare that to Earth, where Elio's room is cluttered and boxed in, a space that feels more like a bunker than a sanctuary. The environments mirror his emotional journey. The alien world feels strange at first, but it becomes freeing. His earthly space, though familiar, is a prison of invisibility. That inversion speaks volumes about how safety isn't always where you're from, it's where you're understood. Then there are the stars themselves. Stars appear constantly in the film, as drawings, projections, symbols, and navigation tools. For Elio, stars represent both the unreachable and the guiding. Early on, he gazes at them not with wonder, but with longing and isolation. As the story progresses, stars shift in meaning. They're no longer distant. They become pathways, constellations built from emotional connection. There's a subtle scene where Elio and another alien connect over shared fears, and behind them, the stars subtly align to echo their mirrored shapes. It's brief, almost hidden, but it tells you everything. The universe is responding to connection, not status or intelligence. Stars are no longer something to reach. They are something that responds when you're finally seen. Even Elio's clothing undergoes symbolic changes. He begins in oversized hoodies and muted tones, literally shrinking into himself. But once in the Communiverse, he's given attire that's almost reflective, responding to emotion with color and texture. The suit doesn't grant him powers, it amplifies his presence. It's a metaphor for authenticity. When Elio is honest, the suit glows. When he's scared or guarded, it dims. The fact that his clothing is emotionally reactive ties directly into the film's larger message. Being yourself isn't just important, it's transformative. Recurring visuals like circles and spirals are also used to reinforce emotional themes. Portals, glowing orbs, the design of the alien tribunal. They're all built around the idea of continuity and return. Nothing in the film is linear. Growth isn't a straight line. Emotions don't progress predictably. Spirals suggest that we return to our struggles again and again, each time with more insight. Elio's emotional arc isn't about solving his problems. It's about revisiting them with new understanding. That's why so many key moments echo each other. A phrase repeated, a gesture mirrored. The structure of the film mirrors the emotional truth that we heal in layers, not all at once. One particularly elegant metaphor is the bridge of voices. A floating platform made of countless overlapping sounds and vibrations that allows Elio to address the Galactic Council. As he walks across it, the voices quiet or swell based on what he says and how he feels. It's a metaphor for how every step we take in self-expression is built on the voices of others. Our family, our culture, our fears, our hopes. And it's also about the fragility of connection. Speak with authenticity, and the bridge holds. Speak with fear or pretense, and it begins to fade. That's not just clever world building. That's poetry in motion. Ultimately, Elio uses metaphor and symbolism not as garnish, but as foundation. It doesn't just tell a story. It layers meaning into every design choice, every visual rhythm, every recurring image. It trusts that its audience, whether 10 years old or 50, can feel those deeper resonances. And because it never announces its symbolism with flashing lights or dramatic orchestration, it rewards close watching and emotional openness. It's a story that works on first view, but blossoms on the second and third. A film where glowing stars, shifting lights, and rhythm-driven speech aren't just cool ideas. They're the emotional language of a story about what it really means to be heard, to be seen, and to finally find a place where both matter. Elio, 2025. Doesn't come prepackaged as part of a franchise or cinematic universe, But what makes its place in the Pixar legacy so fascinating is how it simultaneously feels like a bold departure and a spiritual continuation of the studio's deepest creative themes. It may not be a sequel or a spin-off, but it's unmistakably part of something bigger. A long-running conversation Pixar has been having with its audience for decades. And in that context, Elio becomes something richer than just a standalone sci-fi adventure. It becomes a quiet milestone in how the studio has evolved in both ambition and emotional storytelling. Pixar has never been about franchises in the traditional sense. Yes, there are the Toy Story sequels, the Cars universe, and a few scattered follow-ups like Finding Dory or Incredibles 2. But their most defining work, the films that truly hit the cultural nerve, have always been originals that dared to explore ideas animation rarely touches. Inside Out tackled cognitive development. Coco dealt with death and legacy. Soul asked what it means to really live. Elio fits snugly into that lineage, not because it copies those films, but because it dares to move the conversation forward. It takes Pixar's ongoing interest in identity, self-worth, and emotional honesty, and projects those themes onto a galactic canvas. What Elio shares with its Pixar predecessors is its fearless commitment to personal storytelling. But what sets it apart is how it externalizes inner conflict without needing fantasy rules or time travel gimmicks. The emotions aren't turned into characters. The journey isn't a metaphysical metaphor. It's a literal kid being misunderstood by his world, then suddenly representing it on a cosmic stage. And that setup, while fresh, feels like a natural progression in Pixar's storytelling arc. If Inside Out taught us how emotions work, Elio shows us how emotions are misread, misunderstood, or magnified by the roles we're placed in. That's not just thematic recycling. That's evolution. Historically, Elio also reflects a cultural shift in the way animation speaks to its audiences. Where early animated features often stuck to fantasy, fairy tales, or heroes' journeys, Elio is part of a newer movement where introspection drives plot, and characters are allowed to be uncertain, emotional, and even lost. In that sense, it's following in the footsteps of films like Luca and Turning Red, which focus more on internal identity than external quests. But while those films were grounded in specific cultures or time periods, Elio dares to remove the cultural guardrails altogether. It places the story in the vast abstraction of space, where no one cultural lens dominates. That makes it, paradoxically, one of Pixar's most universally emotional stories, because it's not about where Elio is from, but who he is. If we look at Elio as the beginning of a potential new series, one that could open the door to further Communiverse explorations, it feels ripe with possibilities. The Galactic Council, the alien civilizations, the strange laws of emotional physics at play in this world, it's all quietly constructed with enough detail to suggest a broader narrative. But even if no sequel ever materializes, Elio already enriches Pixar's world by suggesting a new tone, a new pace, and a new kind of protagonist for the studio's future. Elio isn't a dreamer like Remy, a fixer like Woody, or a goal-seeker like Miguel. He's a sensitive, overwhelmed kid who doesn't know how to define himself yet. And that honesty is what makes him groundbreaking in Pixar's unofficial Hall of Leads. There's also a fascinating context to place Elio in, considering the broader history of animated sci-fi. Few films in this genre have succeeded in balancing scale with intimacy. Treasure Planet tried. Titan tried. Even Lightyear, with all its legacy backing, struggled to fully connect on an emotional level. Elio succeeds where those films stumbled, by refusing to put plot before personhood. It doesn't treat the cosmic setting as something to conquer. It treats it as something to reflect against. In doing so, it redefines what animated sci-fi can do. It's not about lasers or villains or saving the universe. It's about saving a kid from feeling like he's nothing. In terms of production history, Elio also arrives during a moment where Pixar is visibly experimenting with tone, structure, and story rhythm. It breaks from the tradition of tight three-act plotting in favor of a more meandering emotional arc. It avoids pop culture references and sidekick comedy. It dares to be quiet. That decision might not seem radical at first, but within the context of mainstream animated cinema, it's a bold pivot. Pixar, long known for pushing animation technology, is now clearly trying to push emotional form, If Elio were part of a historical timeline, it would be bookmarked as a point of quiet rebellion, where emotional realism, identity exploration, and genre subversion were given center stage in a film that could have easily chosen to be loud and safe instead. And if Pixar chooses to return to this world, to this character, or to this mode of storytelling, Elio could be seen in hindsight as the beginning of a new kind of franchise, not built on action and sequels, but on emotional storytelling that grows, deepens, and becomes more resonant with time. So even if Elio stands alone, it still fits into a long narrative, one about where animation has been, where Pixar is going, and what kinds of stories we're finally starting to believe children, and adults, are capable of receiving. It's not part of a saga, but it's part of a movement. And that makes it just as important. Pixar's Elio was a lavish venture, budgeted around $150 million. And the production quality definitely shows. Rich animation, immersive worlds, and top-tier effects that rival any blockbuster. The-numbers.com. 1. Yet when it comes to box office, Elio has underwhelmed significantly, bringing in only about $45.6 million worldwide, roughly 30% of its budget. The-numbers.com. 1. Its opening weekend was particularly rough, around $21 million domestically, marking Pixar's lowest opening ever, and $14 million internationally, totaling just $35 million in early returns. BusinessInsider.com. 2. Industry pundits note that while Pixar originals often gain momentum later, as seen with Elemental's eventual success, Elio's slow start has raised serious concerns. BusinessInsider.com. 2. That said, not all is dim. Elio boasts solid critical praise, a roughly 84% critics score, and over 90% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. ScreenRant.com. 3. Positive word of mouth could prolong its theatrical presence and drive streaming gains later. But right now, it's unlikely to recoup marketing, distribution, and production costs solely from the box office. Furthermore, its timing faced challenges. It opened close to franchise-driven blockbusters like How to Train Your Dragon and Lilo and Stitch, making it tough for an original idea to capture mass attention. YourConroeNews.com. 4. Some critics have even labeled the story formulaic, suggesting that while kids might enjoy the visuals, adults may find it less compelling, possibly dampening parental ticket sales. In short, though Elio spared no expense to be a high-quality animated sci-fi spectacle, its box office performance has been disappointing. Marketing efforts couldn't overcome franchise competition, and despite glowing reviews, it struggled to turn audience affection into box office numbers. Whether long-term digital revenue will help balance the books remains to be seen, but at a glance, Elio is a case of production excellence not aligning with financial success. 1. https://www.the-numbers.com/movie/Elio-% sign 282025% sign 29 $UTM_source =ChatGPT.com Elio 2025 Financial information The Numbers 2. https://www.businessinsider.com/Elio-Pixar-worst-box-office-opening-weekend-2025-6 $6 Elio box office numbers are Pixar's worst ever. Business Insider. 3. https://screenrant.com/Elio-2025-movie-for $million-global-box-office-milestone/?UTM_source =ChatGPT.com New Pixar movie with 84% RT score hits major box office. 4. https://www.yourconrenuescom/neighborhood/moco/events/articles/new Disney Pixar collab Elio comes basic php_source =CADEPT.com Danny Minton. New Disney and Pixar collab. Elio comes off as basic but will entertain the young ones. Here's where you can catch Elio and enjoy it at its best. In theaters right now. Elio opened exclusively in cinemas on June 20, 2025. Across the US and several international markets. This is still the only way to experience it, and for good reason. Pixar crafted the visuals, audio, and emotional beats with the theatrical environment in mind. Huge screens, immersive sound systems, and a dark room all play a big role in bringing Elio's cosmic journey and emotional nuances to life. If you can, this is the version you'll want to see, and sooner rather than later. Streaming and digital rental are coming soon. Like other recent Pixar films, Elio is expected to become available for digital purchase or rental about 8 weeks after its theatrical debut, which puts its release sometime around mid-August 2025. That window allows it to gain more ground in cinemas before opening up to audiences at home. Eventually, it will be available on Disney+, though not just yet. Based on Pixar's typical release patterns, Elio is likely to land on the platform roughly 90 to 100 days after its theatrical premiere, making late September a strong possibility. This will be the moment when the film becomes most accessible to a broad audience, and perfect for rewatching or introducing to younger viewers in the comfort of home. If you're planning to make the most of Elio, the theatrical experience offers the fullest immersion. The awe of the Communiverse, the intricate detail in character design, and the sweeping score all land with a different kind of magic when they're enveloping you in a theater. But once it hits digital platforms, the convenience and extras, behind-the-scenes features, commentary, and bonus shorts, make the home version a worthy second round. Disney Plus will ultimately provide the easiest access and the widest reach, great for repeat viewing or discovering the film for the first time as part of a family movie night. So for now, the best and only way to see Elio is on the big screen. Soon after, digital rentals will carry the torch. And if you're patient, streaming will bring it home for good.